Marcus Cole heard the noise again, and this time he was sure it was not the ship making old sounds. He grabbed his flashlight and walked slowly toward the cargo hold of his freighter called the Wandering Mule. The ship was 30 years old, and it made many strange noises, but this sound was different, and it made his heart beat faster. He opened the cargo hold door, and the smell of old metal and dust hit his nose. Boxes of supplies and salvage parts filled the room from floor to ceiling. Marcus moved his flashlight across the dark space and listened carefully for any movement. Then he saw it. Behind a stack of crates, there was a small figure trying to hide. Marcus felt his body go tense, and he reached for the small blade he kept on his belt. Stowaways were common in the outer colonies, and some of them were dangerous criminals. "Come out now," he said in a firm voice. "I can see you hiding there." Marcus took a step closer and pointed his light directly at the hiding spot. And slowly, a small hand appeared from behind the crates. It was not a human hand. The skin was pale blue, and thin lines of light ran across it like tiny rivers. A child crawled out from her hiding place, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She was a Valorian girl, and she could not be older than 8 years by human counting. Her large silver eyes looked up at him with pure terror, and her whole body was shaking. The bioluminescent markings on her skin that should have been glowing bright were dim and weak. Marcus had seen Valorians before at space stations and trading posts. They were one of the most powerful races in the galaxy, with their advanced technology and long lives. They looked down on humans and called them primitive creatures not worthy of respect. But this little girl looked nothing like the proud and cold Valorians he had met. She looked broken and afraid, and so very small. "Please do not hurt me," she whispered in broken galactic common. "I am sorry for hiding on your ship." Marcus lowered his blade and knelt down to be at her level. He could see now that her clothes were torn and dirty. Her cheeks were hollow from hunger, and dark circles sat under her eyes. This child had been suffering for a long time. "I am not going to hurt you," Marcus said softly. "What is your name, and how did you get on my ship?" The girl swallowed hard, and her voice came out small and weak. Her name was Kaliveth, and she came from the noble houses of Valoria Prime. Her mother had been a lady of high standing, but she had died 2 cycles ago from a sickness that even Valorian medicine could not cure. After her mother passed, her father had married again, very quickly, to a woman named Serathine. Kaliveth stopped talking, and her thin body shook even harder. Marcus waited patiently for her to continue. He had learned long ago that rushing a scared creature only made things worse. The girl explained that her stepmother was a cold and cruel woman who wanted power above all things. When Serathine gave birth to a son, she no longer had any use for Kaliveth. The girl had become a problem that needed to be removed. But killing a noble child would cause scandal and questions. So Serathine found another way. "She had her servants put medicine in my drink that made me sleep," Kaliveth said, with tears running down her blue cheeks. "When I woke up, I was in a dark box on a cargo ship. I heard the workers say they were taking supplies to the human sectors where no one would look for me." Marcus felt anger burn hot in his chest. He had heard stories about the cruelty of noble families across the galaxy, but hearing it from this tiny girl made it real and horrible. What kind of monster would throw away a child like garbage? "How long have you been hiding on ships?" Marcus asked gently. "Many weeks," Kaliveth answered. "I moved from ship to ship when they stopped at stations. I ate what food I could find in cargo holds. Your ship had boxes of dried fruit, and I was so hungry." Marcus looked at the open crate nearby and saw that she had eaten very little. Even starving, she had tried not to take too much. Something about that small act of consideration made his heart ache in a way he had not felt in years. He thought about what he should do. The smart choice was to drop her at the nearest station and let the authorities handle it. Valorians were powerful, and they did not like humans getting involved in their business. If he kept this girl, he could bring serious trouble upon himself. But then he looked at her face and saw something that shattered all his careful thoughts. He saw the same fear and loneliness that he had seen in his own daughter's eyes before the colony fever took her away 5 years ago. His little Emma had been around the same age when she died in his arms while he could do nothing to save her. "What will happen to me now?" Kaliveth asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Marcus knew he should give her a practical answer about authorities and proper channels, but the words that came out of his mouth surprised even himself. "Are you hungry right now?" he asked instead. The girl nodded slowly, and her silver eyes went wide. She seemed confused by the question, as if she had expected punishment instead of kindness. "Then let us get you something to eat," Marcus said, and he stood up and offered her his hand. Kaliveth stared at his hand like it was the strangest thing she had ever seen. Valorians did not touch humans if they could avoid it. Humans were considered dirty and beneath them. But this man was offering his hand to help her up. She reached out with her small blue fingers and placed them in his rough, calloused palm. His hand was warm and strong and gentle all at once. He pulled her up carefully, as if she was made of glass. "My stepmother said humans were like animals," Kaliveth said quietly, as they walked toward the door. "She said you had no feelings and no honor." Marcus looked down at her and gave her a small, sad smile. He had heard such things said about humans many times before. The galaxy looked at his species and saw only primitive creatures that had barely reached the stars. They did not see the love and courage and stubborn hope that humans carried in their hearts. "Well," Marcus said, as he led her toward the small kitchen area of his ship, "your stepmother was wrong about a lot of things, it seems." They reached the kitchen, and Marcus helped the girl sit down at the small table. He opened his storage unit and began to pull out ingredients for a simple stew. It was a recipe his late wife Sarah had taught him many years ago. He had not made it for anyone since Emma died. As the smell of cooking food filled the small space, Kaliveth watched him with wonder in her eyes. No one had ever cooked for her before. On Valoria, children of noble houses ate nutrient paste delivered by servants. The idea of someone making food with their own hands just for her was beyond anything she could understand. "Sir," she said softly while he stirred the pot, "what will you do with me?" Marcus turned to look at her and saw the fear still hiding behind her eyes. She expected to be sold or traded or thrown away again. That was all she knew of the universe. "First you will eat," he said firmly. "Then you will sleep in a real bed. And you can call me Marcus." Kaliveth felt something strange happen in her chest. It was warm and frightening and wonderful all at the same time. She did not have words for it yet, but one day she would learn that humans called this feeling hope. 3 months had passed since Marcus found the small Valorian girl hiding in his cargo hold, and everything about his life had changed. The wandering mule was no longer a quiet ship carrying a lonely man through the stars. Now it was filled with the sounds of small feet running down corridors and curious questions about how everything worked. Kaliveth sat at the kitchen table, watching Marcus prepare another meal. She had learned that he cooked every day, and that each dish came from memories of people he had loved. Tonight he was making something called bread, and the smell of it baking made her feel warm inside in ways she could not explain. "Why do humans use heat to change their food?" she asked, while swinging her legs under the table. Marcus smiled as he checked the small oven. 3 months ago the girl had barely spoken at all. Now she asked questions constantly, and he loved every single one of them. "Because it tastes better that way," he answered, "and because cooking is about more than just eating. It is about taking time to make something with care. When you cook for someone, you are telling them they matter enough to spend your time on. Kaleveth thought about this for a long moment. On Valoria, no one had ever spent time on her. Servants delivered her nutrient paste at scheduled hours, and she ate alone in her room. Her stepmother said that children should not be seen or heard until they were old enough to be useful. The bread came out of the oven, golden and perfect. Marcus cut a slice and spread something yellow and creamy on top before handing it to her. Kaleveth took a bite, and her silver eyes went wide with shock. The taste was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was soft and warm, and the yellow spread was rich and smooth. Tears began to fall down her blue cheeks, and Marcus immediately knelt beside her with worry on his face. "What is wrong?" he asked urgently. "Does it taste bad? Are you sick?" Kaleveth shook her head and tried to find words through her tears. She was not sad at all. She was feeling something so big that her small body did not know how to hold it. "No one ever made me anything before," she finally said. "This bread is the most beautiful thing I have ever eaten. You made it with your hands just for me." Marcus felt his own eyes grow wet, and he pulled the small girl into a gentle hug. She tensed at first because Valorians did not embrace, but then she melted into his arms and held on tight. Her bioluminescent markings began to glow brighter than he had ever seen them. That night, Kaleveth woke up screaming. Her nightmares had come again, filled with dark boxes and cold servants, and her stepmother's cruel smile. She sat up in the small bed Marcus had made for her, and she sobbed into her hands. The door opened, and Marcus appeared in his sleep clothes, looking tired but alert. On Valoria, children who had nightmares were told to practice mental discipline and control their emotions. Weakness was not permitted, and comfort was not given. But Marcus did not tell her to be strong. He walked to her bed and sat down beside her. He put his arm around her shoulders and began to hum a soft tune that rose and fell like gentle waves. "What is that sound?" Kaleveth asked between her sniffles. "It is called a lullaby," Marcus explained. "My mother used to sing it to me when I was small and scared. Then I sang it to my daughter Emma. Now I am singing it to you." He continued to hum, and his deep voice vibrated through her in a soothing way. Slowly her breathing calmed, and her tears stopped. She leaned against his shoulder and let the music carry her fear away. "Will you stay until I sleep?" she asked in a tiny voice. "I will stay as long as you need me to," Marcus promised. He stayed beside her until her eyes closed and her breath became slow and peaceful. Then he stayed a little longer, just to make sure. When he finally went back to his own bed, he realized something had changed inside him. The empty place in his heart, where Emma used to live, was not empty anymore. It was filling up again, with love for this strange blue girl from the stars. The days that followed were filled with lessons of many kinds. Marcus was not educated by Valorian standards, and he knew nothing of their advanced sciences or mathematical systems. But he had other things to teach that no Valorian school ever would. He taught Kaleveth how to fix broken pipes and patch damaged hull sections. He showed her how the engine worked and let her help with simple repairs. On Valoria, such work was done by machines and servants. The idea of a noble doing manual labor was considered shameful, but Kaleveth discovered that she loved working with her hands. There was something wonderful about fixing a broken thing and making it whole again. "I made a mistake," she said one day, when she connected two wires incorrectly and caused a small spark. "I am sorry. I will do better." She flinched as if expecting punishment. On Valoria, mistakes were met with harsh words and loss of privileges. Her stepmother had once locked her in her room for 3 days because she spilled water on an expensive rug. But Marcus just laughed and showed her the correct way to connect the wires. He explained what had gone wrong and why it happened. There was no anger in his voice and no disappointment in his eyes. "Mistakes are how we learn," he told her. "Every great engineer in history made thousands of mistakes before they got things right. The only real failure is giving up. Kaleveth stared at him as if he had just revealed one of the great secrets of the universe. The idea that mistakes were acceptable and even valuable was completely foreign to her. Valorian culture demanded perfection from the moment of birth. To fail was to be worthless. One day while they were docked at a trading station, Kaleveth asked Marcus a question that had been bothering her for weeks. "Why do humans have such short names?" she asked. "My name has many sounds, but you just call me K. Is that not disrespectful?" Marcus stopped walking and turned to look at her with gentle eyes. They were standing in a busy marketplace filled with beings of many different species. Humans and aliens moved around them like rivers flowing around stones. "In human culture, short names are not disrespectful," he explained. "We call them nicknames, and we give them to people we care about. A nickname means you are special to someone. It means you are close enough to their heart that they have a name just for you." Kaleveth processed this information carefully. Her full name was a mark of her noble status and her family line. But this short name of K was something different. It was a mark of love. "So when you call me K," she said slowly, "you are saying that you care about me." "Yes," Marcus confirmed. "That is exactly what I am saying." The girl's markings flared bright blue, and she smiled the biggest smile Marcus had ever seen from her. From that moment on, she introduced herself as K to everyone they met. Later that same day, they encountered trouble. A tall Valorian merchant spotted K at a supply shop, and his face twisted with disgust. He marched over and looked down at Marcus with cold, silver eyes. "What is this?" the merchant sneered. "A human keeping a Valorian child like some kind of pet? This is disgusting. The girl is clearly from noble blood, and you have contaminated her with your primitive ways." Marcus felt Kay grab his hand, and her small fingers were trembling. The merchant's words had cut deep into old wounds. She expected Marcus to step aside and apologize. She expected him to let the Valorian take her away. But Marcus did not move. He stepped slightly forward so that he was between Kay and the merchant. His eyes were calm, but there was steel behind them that made the Valorian hesitate. "She is not a pet," Marcus said in a quiet, firm voice. "She is my daughter, and if you have a problem with that, we can step outside and discuss it." The merchant looked into the human's eyes and saw something that surprised him. He saw a father who would fight and bleed and die before letting anyone harm his child. It was a look that crossed all species and all cultures. It was the look of unconditional love. The Valorian backed away without another word and disappeared into the crowd. Kay stared up at Marcus with wonder glowing in her eyes. No one had ever stood up for her before. No one had ever called her their daughter. That night, as they flew through the stars toward their next destination, Kay sat in the co-pilot's seat beside Marcus. The view screen showed 1,000,000,000 distant suns stretching out into forever. It was beautiful and vast and a little scary. "Dad," Kay said softly. Marcus almost did not hear her at first. The word had slipped out so naturally, as if she had been saying it her whole life. But when it registered, his heart swelled so big he thought it might burst. "Yes, Kay," he answered with a slight catch in his voice. "Thank you for being my family." Marcus reached over and squeezed her small hand. No more words were needed. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars go by. A human and his alien daughter, flying through the universe, finding their way home. The message came through while they were docked at a small trading post on the edge of human space. Marcus had been checking their supply inventory when his communication panel lit up with an official seal he had never seen before. It was purple and silver and shaped like a curved blade, the symbol of Valorian noble justice. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the message and began to read. The words hit him like physical blows, each one worse than the last. A formal legal summons had been issued by the Lady Seraphine of House Varathon. She was demanding the immediate return of her stepdaughter, Kaletheth, who had been illegally taken from Valorian space by a human criminal. Marcus read the charges against him with growing anger. According to this document, he had kidnapped a noble child for unknown purposes. He had corrupted her with human influence and damaged her connection to Valorian culture. The punishment for such crimes was severe, and included imprisonment on a Valorian penal world for the rest of his natural life. But the worst part was not the threats against him. The worst part was what would happen to Kay if she was returned. The document stated that she would be placed in a re-education facility to repair the psychological damage caused by human contact. Marcus knew what that really meant. They would break her spirit and erase everything that made her who she was. He could not let that happen. He would die before he let them take his daughter. Kay walked into the room with a smile on her face and a small mechanical toy in her hands. She had been practicing her repair skills on broken items from the cargo hold, and she was proud of her latest success. But when she saw Marcus standing frozen at the communication panel, her smile faded. "Dad, what is wrong?" she asked, with worry creeping into her voice. "You look scared." Marcus did not want to tell her. He wanted to protect her from this fear and let her stay happy and innocent for just a little longer. But she deserved to know the truth. She was part of this family, and family did not keep secrets from each other. He knelt down to her level and took her small hands in his. Then he explained everything about the message and what it meant. He watched her silver eyes fill with terror as the shadow of her past reached out to grab her. "She found me," Kay whispered. "I knew she would find me. She always said there was nowhere in the galaxy I could hide from her." Her bioluminescent markings flickered and dimmed as fear took hold of her heart. She tried to pull away from Marcus and back toward the door. Some part of her was already preparing to run and hide again, just like she had done for all those weeks before he found her. "Kay, stop," Marcus said firmly but gently. "Look at me." She froze and turned back to face him. Her whole body was shaking, and tears were starting to form in her eyes. She looked so small and fragile in that moment, like a tiny candle flame about to be blown out by a cold wind. "She is coming for me," Kay said. "You should let me go. If you try to fight them, they will hurt you. They will put you in prison forever. I am not worth that." The words stabbed into Marcus like hot knives. This beautiful, wonderful girl truly believed she was not worth fighting for. Her stepmother had done such terrible damage to her soul that she could not even imagine someone choosing her over their own safety. Marcus pulled her into his arms and held her tight. He could feel her heart pounding against his chest like a small, frightened bird. But he did not let go, and he did not waver. "Kay, I need you to listen to me very carefully," he said with his voice steady and strong. "I have lost people I loved. My wife Sarah died when raiders attacked our colony. My daughter Emma died from a fever that I could not cure. I held them both as they slipped away, and I could do nothing to save them." He pulled back slightly so he could look into her eyes. His own eyes were wet, but his gaze was firm and full of fire. "But I can protect you," he continued, "and I will. Not because it is easy, and not because it is safe, because you are my kid, you are my daughter, and I love you. Nobody is taking you from me. Not your stepmother, and not the Valorian Council, and not the whole damn galaxy. Do you understand?" Kay stared at him for a long moment. She had never heard anyone speak to her with such fierce love. On Valoria, emotions were considered weaknesses to be controlled and hidden. But this human wore his heart openly, and without shame. He loved her, and he was not afraid to say it. Something broke inside her, and she threw her arms around his neck. She cried harder than she had ever cried in her life. But these were different tears. They were tears of relief and hope and overwhelming gratitude. Her markings flared bright gold, which was a Valorian sign of profound emotional bonding that only happened with true family. "I love you too, Dad," she sobbed into his shoulder. "I am so scared, but I believe you. I believe you will protect me." They held each other for a long time in the quiet of the ship. When they finally let go, Marcus had already begun forming a plan in his mind. He would not run blindly like a frightened animal. He would fight smart and gather weapons of a different kind. Over the next several days, Marcus began collecting evidence. He contacted the cargo company whose ship had originally transported Kay and requested their transport logs. The records clearly showed that she had been loaded as unregistered cargo, not as a passenger with proper documentation. No child traveling legally would be shipped in a cargo container. He took Kay to a medical station run by a neutral species called the Malorans. They scanned her thoroughly and documented everything they found. The results made Marcus sick with anger. Her body showed signs of long-term malnutrition, and her brain patterns indicated severe psychological trauma, consistent with years of emotional abuse and neglect. The medical report was damning evidence against whoever had been caring for her before. Marcus also reached out to beings he had met during his travels. Station workers, who had seen Kay when she first arrived, remembered how thin and broken she had looked. A Krethnar mercenary named Gora, who Marcus had done business with, agreed to testify about the girl's recovery under human care. Even a Valorian trader, who had witnessed Sarathine's cruelty at social gatherings, sent a secret message offering to provide information. "Why are all these people helping us?" Kay asked one evening as Marcus organized his growing collection of evidence. "Because the galaxy is not as cold as your stepmother wants you to believe," Marcus answered. "There are good beings everywhere. Sometimes they just need a reason to stand up and do the right thing." Kay thought about this, and a small smile crossed her face. For so long, she had believed that kindness was rare, and that cruelty was the natural way of the universe. But here was proof that she had been wrong. Strangers from many different species were standing up for a little Valorian girl they barely knew. On the 5th day after the summons arrived, Marcus received another message. A Valorian legal envoy ship had entered the system and was requesting that he dock at Concordance Prime for an official arbitration hearing. The fate of Kaylee Veth would be decided by a neutral arbiter according to galactic law. Marcus looked at the star map showing the envoy ship approaching. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. He had done everything he could to prepare, and now it was time to face this enemy directly. "Kay," he called out, "come here, please." She walked over and stood beside him looking at the screen. She saw the Valorian ship approaching, and her markings dimmed slightly with fear. But then she felt her father's hand on her shoulder, and some of that fear melted away. "Are we going to run?" she asked quietly. "No," Marcus replied. "We are going to fight. We are going to walk into that hearing with our heads held high, and we are going to prove that you belong with me. And when it is over, we are going to fly away together as a family." Kay looked up at him with wonder in her silver eyes. This human, who had no power and no status, was ready to challenge one of the most influential species in the galaxy. He was doing it all for her. "I will be brave," she promised. "I will be brave like you taught me." Marcus smiled and ruffled the strange blue hair on her head. She had learned so much in these months. She had grown from a broken, frightened creature into a confident, curious girl who fixed machines and cooked bread and laughed at silly jokes. He would not let anyone take that away. "Let us go show them what a human father will do for his daughter," Marcus said, as he set course for Concordance Prime. The stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to faster than light speed. Father and daughter stood together at the helm, watching the universe blur around them. The confrontation was coming, but they would face it together. Concordance Prime was a massive space station that floated in neutral territory where no single species held power. It had been built centuries ago as a place where disputes could be settled without war. Beings from every corner of the galaxy came here to seek justice, and the decisions made in its halls were respected everywhere. Marcus guided the wandering mule into the station's docking bay with steady hands. Beside him, Kay sat silently in the co-pilot seat with her silver eyes fixed on the viewport. Her bioluminescent markings were dim with anxiety, but she kept her back straight and her chin lifted, just like Marcus had taught her. "Remember," Marcus said, as the docking clamps secured the ship. "You have nothing to be ashamed of. You did nothing wrong. We are here to tell the truth, and the truth is on our side." Kay nodded and reached over to squeeze his hand. She was terrified down to her bones, but she trusted her father. He had never lied to her, and he had never let her down. If he said they would win, then she would believe him. They walked through the station corridors toward the arbitration chamber. Beings of many species passed them, and some gave curious looks at the strange pair. A human man and a Valorian child walking side by side was not a common sight. But Marcus ignored the stares and kept moving forward with purpose. The arbitration chamber was a large circular room, with seats rising up on all sides like a theater. In the center was a raised platform where the parties would present their cases. At the far end sat a massive being covered in crystalline scales that shifted colors with every movement. This was the arbiter, and they belonged to a species called the Caliph, who were known throughout the galaxy for their perfect fairness. On one side of the platform stood Lady Seraphine, surrounded by advisors and legal experts. She was tall and beautiful, with sharp features and cold eyes. Her gown was made of expensive fabric that shimmered like liquid metal. She looked at Marcus with pure contempt, as if he was an insect that had wandered into her palace. Marcus took his place on the opposite side, with only Kay beside him. He had no lawyers and no advisors. He had only himself and his evidence and his love for his daughter. It seemed like a pitiful defense against such power, but he refused to show fear. The arbiter spoke in a voice that resonated through the chamber like deep bells. The hearing would now begin, and both parties would have the chance to present their cases. Lady Seraphine would speak first as the one who had brought the complaint. Seraphine stepped forward with graceful movements and began to tell her carefully crafted story. She spoke of her deep concern for her stepdaughter, who had been taken by a human criminal during a moment of confusion. She described the pain of not knowing where the child was and the desperate search that had followed. Her voice trembled with false emotion, and her eyes produced tears that seemed rehearsed. "This human," she said while pointing at Marcus, "has corrupted an innocent Valorian child. He has filled her mind with primitive ideas and severed her connection to her noble heritage. I only wish to bring her home and repair the damage that has been done." The advisors around her nodded and murmured in agreement. Their case seemed strong and reasonable. Who could argue against a grieving mother wanting to reclaim her child? Then it was Marcus's turn to speak. He stepped onto the platform with no fancy words prepared and no theatrical gestures. He was just a freighter captain who hauled cargo through the outer colonies. But when he opened his mouth, his voice carried the weight of absolute truth. "Kay did not come to my ship by accident," he began. "She did not wander away or get lost. She was drugged and placed in a cargo container and shipped into human space like unwanted garbage. The transport logs from the cargo company prove this. She was not traveling as a passenger, but as unregistered freight." He pulled out a datapad and displayed the records for the arbiter to see. The logs clearly showed that a container marked as empty had been loaded at a Valorian station, and that its true contents were never documented. This was not how a caring family transported a child. "When I found her, she was starving and terrified," Marcus continued. "She had been hiding in cargo holds for weeks, eating whatever scraps she could find. I took her to a neutral medical station, and they documented everything. Her body showed signs of long-term malnutrition, and her brain patterns indicated severe trauma from emotional abuse. He showed the medical reports to the Arbiter and explained each finding in clear, simple terms. The evidence painted a picture of a child who had been neglected and tormented long before she ever ended up on his ship. This was not the result of a few months away from home. This damage had been done over years. Sarathine's face remained calm, but Marcus saw a flicker of something dark in her eyes. She had not expected this human to come prepared with real evidence. She had assumed he would be a simple primitive, easily overwhelmed by Valorian legal might. "I also have testimony from witnesses," Marcus said. "Station workers who saw Kay when she first arrived. Traders who have dealt with Lady Sarathine and know her true character. Even a Valorian citizen who was willing to risk their reputation to speak the truth." He presented each testimony one by one, letting the words of honest beings build a mountain of evidence against the lies. The chamber grew quiet as the picture became clear. This was not a case of kidnapping. This was a case of child abuse and attempted murder. The Arbiter listened to everything, with their crystalline face giving nothing away. When Marcus finished, they turned to Sarathine and asked if she had anything to say in response to these accusations. Sarathine stepped forward again, but some of her confidence had faded. She tried to dismiss the evidence as fabrications and human tricks. She claimed that the medical reports were biased, and the witnesses had been bribed. But her words sounded hollow and desperate. Then the Arbiter made a surprising decision. They announced that the child herself would be allowed to speak. This was rare in Valorian legal proceedings, where children were considered property rather than individuals with voices. But this was not a Valorian court, and here, even the smallest voice deserved to be heard. Kay walked onto the platform, with her legs shaking beneath her. She could feel her stepmother's cold eyes on her, and memories of punishments and cruelty flooded her mind. But she also felt her father's steady presence behind her, like a warm sun at her back. She was not alone. She was never alone anymore. She faced the Arbiter, and began to speak in a clear, steady voice. "My mother died when I was very young, and I missed her every day. My father married Lady Sarathine soon after, and I tried so hard to make her love me, but nothing I did was ever good enough. She called me worthless, and ugly, and stupid. She locked me in my room for days when I made small mistakes. She told me that no one would ever want me." The chamber was completely silent as the small girl spoke her truth. Her bioluminescent markings began to glow stronger with each word, as if the act of speaking was giving her power. "When she sent me away, I thought I would die alone in the dark between the stars, but then I found Marcus. He gave me food and warmth and safety. He did not have to help me because I was nothing to him. Just a strange alien child hiding in his cargo. But he chose to care for me anyway." Tears were running down her blue cheeks, but her voice did not waver. She turned slightly so she could see both the Arbiter and her father at the same time. "He taught me that mistakes are how we learn. He taught me that cooking food for someone is a way of showing love. He held me when I had nightmares and sang me songs until I fell asleep. He stood up to a Valorian merchant who insulted me and called me his daughter in front of everyone." Kay took a deep breath, and her markings flared brilliant gold. She was about to say the most important thing she had ever said in her life. "My stepmother says I belong with my Valorian family, but she threw me away. Marcus says I belong with him, and he fought to keep me. A father is not about blood or species or noble titles. A father is someone who loves you and protects you and helps you become who you are meant to be. By that truth, Marcus is my father, and I choose him." Sarathine lost her careful composure, and her face twisted with rage. She stepped forward and pointed at Kay with a trembling finger. "You ungrateful half-breed embarrassment," she hissed. "After everything I did to give your father a proper heir, you dare to stand there and humiliate our house. You should have died in that cargo hold like the worthless creature you are." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Seraphine realized too late what she had said. Her mask had slipped completely, and everyone had seen the monster underneath. She tried to take back her words, but the damage was done. The Arbiter rose to their full height, and their crystalline scales turned a deep, serious blue. They had heard enough, and they were ready to give their judgment. The evidence and testimony presented here show a clear pattern of abuse and abandonment by Lady Seraphine, the Arbiter declared. The child was not kidnapped, but rescued. Under the Galactic Orphan Protections, a child abandoned by their custodial family may be claimed by whoever provides genuine care. Marcus Cole has provided such care and has proven himself worthy of the title of father. They turned to Marcus and Kay, who stood together, holding hands. "I grant full legal guardianship of Kaleveth to Marcus Cole, effective immediately. This guardianship shall be recognized across all jurisdictions of the Galactic Concordance. Lady Seraphine is ordered to have no further contact with the child, and will face additional investigation for her crimes." Seraphine screamed in fury as station security moved to escort her out. Her political allies melted away, not wanting to be associated with her disgrace. In minutes she was gone, and the chamber was quiet again. Kay looked up at Marcus with joy shining in her silver eyes. They had won. They had actually won. Marcus knelt down and hugged his daughter tight. He was crying now, and he did not care who saw. They had walked into the heart of enemy territory with nothing but truth and love, and they had emerged victorious. "Let us go home, kid," he whispered into her strange blue hair. "We are already home, Dad," Kay answered. "We have been home ever since you found me." 1 year had passed since the trial at Concordance Prime, and everything about the wandering mule had changed. The old freighter still made strange noises, and its engine still needed constant attention. But now it truly felt like a home, instead of just a ship carrying a lonely man through the void. The biggest change was Kay's room. Marcus had spent 3 weeks converting one of the smaller cargo holds into a proper bedroom for his daughter. He had installed warm lighting and painted the walls a soft blue that matched her skin. Star maps covered every surface, showing all the places they had visited together, and all the places they still wanted to go. Kay had decorated with treasures from their travels. A crystal from the caves of Melaran 7 sat on her shelf next to a mechanical puzzle she had fixed herself. Pictures hung on the walls, showing her with Marcus at various ports and stations. In every image, she was smiling with her bioluminescent markings glowing bright and healthy. Today, she was sitting at the small desk Marcus had built for her, working on her correspondence courses. She was studying engineering and diplomacy through a distance learning program designed for children who lived on ships. Her teachers sent lessons through the communication network, and she completed assignments at her own pace. "Kay," Marcus called from the cockpit, "come here. There is something you should see." She saved her work and hurried down the corridor. Her footsteps were quick and light, and she no longer flinched at sudden sounds. The frightened creature who had hidden in the cargo hold was gone. In her place was a confident, curious girl who faced each new day with excitement. When she reached the cockpit, she found Marcus staring at the sensor display with a strange expression on his face. There was a ship approaching, and its registration codes showed that it came from Valoria. Kay felt a moment of fear before pushing it down. Seraphine was gone, and could never hurt her again. "Who is it?" she asked, while taking her place in the co-pilot seat. Marcus shook his head slowly. The ship was not large enough to be an official vessel. It seemed to be a private craft, traveling alone. A communication request was blinking on the panel, and Marcus answered it with caution. A face appeared on the screen, and Kay felt her heart skip. It was a Valorian man, with sharp features and silver eyes, that looked just like hers. His skin was the same pale blue as her own, and his markings formed similar patterns. This was Lord Varathon. This was her biological father. "I request permission to dock and speak with you," the man said in a tired voice. "Please, I have come a very long way." Marcus looked at Kay, and the decision was clear in his eyes. This was her choice to make. He would support whatever she decided. Kay studied the face on the screen. She had not seen this man in over 2 years. He had been weak and absent and had let Seraphine control everything, including how his daughter was treated. Part of her wanted to refuse and send him away, but another part was curious about what he had to say. "You may dock," she said clearly, "but understand that this is my father's ship, and you are a guest here." Lord Varathon flinched slightly at her words, but he nodded in acceptance. His ship connected to the Wandering Mule's docking port, and he came aboard alone. He was thinner than Kay remembered, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who had not slept well in a very long time. They sat in the small common area, with Marcus positioned protectively near Kay. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Lord Varathon began to speak. "I watched the recording of your trial," he said quietly. "I heard everything you said. Every word was a knife in my heart, because I knew it was true. I failed you in every way a father can fail. I let my new wife torment you. I looked away when she hurt you. I was weak and cowardly, and I am not worthy of your forgiveness." Tears began to fall from his silver eyes. On Valoria, such a display of emotion was considered shameful. But Lord Varathon was beyond caring about appearances. His guilt had eaten away at him until there was nothing left but raw honesty. "Seraphine has been exiled from noble society," he continued. "Her crimes were exposed, and even her own family has disowned her. My son by her has been taken by relatives who will raise him properly. I have lost everything because of my weakness." He looked at Kay with desperate, pleading eyes. He wanted something from her, but he seemed afraid to ask for it directly. Kay sat quietly and let his words sink in. She had imagined this moment many times. In some versions, she screamed at him and told him how much he had hurt her. In others, she threw her arms around him and forgave everything. But now that the moment was real, she felt something unexpected. She felt calm. "You were my father by blood," she said in a steady voice, "but you were never my dad. A father is more than biology. A father is someone who protects you and teaches you and loves you even when it is hard. You did none of those things." Lord Varathon flinched as if she had struck him. But Kay was not finished. "Marcus found me starving and scared in his cargo hold. He had no reason to help me and every reason to turn me away. But he chose to be my father. He fed me and taught me and held me when I was afraid. He fought the Valorian legal system with nothing but evidence and courage. He proved that love is not about species or blood or noble titles." She paused and took a deep breath. Her markings glowed steady gold as she spoke the truth that had taken her so long to understand. "I forgive you," she said, "not because you deserve it, but because holding hatred is heavy, and I want to fly light. I forgive you so that I can be free. But I am not yours anymore. Marcus is my father, and this ship is my home. You have no place in my life except as a stranger who shares my blood." Lord Varathon broke down completely. His sobs filled the small room, and his body shook with the weight of his failures. He had come hoping for redemption, but found only the consequences of his choices. There would be no happy reunion, and no second chance. "I understand," he finally managed to say. "You are right about everything. I was never your father. I was only the man who helped create you. That human has earned a title I never deserved." He stood and wiped his eyes. Before leaving, he turned to Marcus and did something shocking. He bowed deeply in the Valorian gesture of highest respect. "You are a remarkable being," Lord Varathon said to Marcus. "You have done what I could not. You have given her a real family. Please take care of my daughter. She deserves the love you have shown her." Then he walked back to his ship and undocked. Kay and Marcus watched his vessel grow smaller and smaller, until it disappeared into the distant stars. He was gone, and Kay felt nothing but peace. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked gently. "Yes," Kay answered honestly. "I said what I needed to say. Now I can let it go." She leaned against his shoulder, and he put his arm around her. The view screen showed a binary sunset over a frontier world where they had stopped for supplies. Two suns sinking below the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and purples and deep reds. It was beautiful and vast and full of possibilities. "Dad," Kay said, after a long, comfortable silence, "do you think Emma would have liked me? Your first daughter, I mean." Marcus felt his heart squeeze at the mention of Emma. It had been years since she passed, but the love never faded. He thought about the question carefully before answering. "Yeah, little star," he said softly. "I think she would have loved having a sister." Kay looked up at him with surprise in her silver eyes. "Sister," she repeated. "That is how I think of it," Marcus explained. "I did not replace Emma. I could never replace her. But I was lucky enough to have two daughters in one lifetime. One who I lost too soon, and one who found me when I needed her most. You are both my children, and you always will be." Kay felt warmth spread through her entire body. Her markings glowed brighter than they ever had before. She was not a replacement or a substitute. She was a daughter loved for who she was. "I love you, Dad," she said simply. "I love you too, Kay," Marcus replied. They sat together watching the twin suns disappear below the horizon. A human father and his Valorian daughter united by something stronger than blood or species. The galaxy was vast and cold and full of beings who would look down on them. But none of that mattered. In the centuries that followed, scholars and historians would study the phenomenon of human adoption. They noted with curiosity that humans had a strange tendency to claim the unwanted and discarded children of other species. Where other races saw contamination, humans saw potential. Where others saw burden, humans saw family. Some argued this was a weakness that would doom humanity to carry the galaxy's refuse. Others believed it was the source of human strength. By making family out of strangers, humans built bonds that crossed every boundary. But aboard a battered freighter called the Wandering Mule, such debates meant nothing. Marcus Cole and Kay Cole already knew the answer to questions the scholars were still asking. Family was not about blood or birth or belonging to the same species. Family was about choice and commitment and showing up day after day, even when it was hard. It was about a bowl of stew made with love and a lullaby sung in the dark. It was about standing up to bullies and fighting impossible battles. It was about two hearts finding each other in the vast emptiness between the stars. Kay looked out at the universe stretching endlessly before them. Once she had been lost and broken and certain that no one would ever want her. Truly and completely home. "Where should we go next?" she asked with excitement sparkling in her eyes. Marcus pulled up the star charts and studied the options. There were cargo runs to complete and salvage jobs waiting. There were new worlds to explore and adventures to find. The whole galaxy was open to them. "Wherever we go," he said with a smile, "we go together." Kay grinned and her markings pulsed with joy. Together, That was the most beautiful word in any language. The wandering mule's engines hummed to life, and the old freighter began its journey toward the stars. Father and daughter sat side by side at the helm. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. They had proven that love could conquer anything. And somewhere in the great mystery of the universe, perhaps the spirits of Sarah and Emma were watching. Perhaps they smiled, knowing that Marcus had found his way back to happiness. Perhaps they were grateful that a small blue girl from the stars had healed the broken places in his heart. The ship jumped to faster than light speed, and reality blurred into streaks of light. A new adventure was beginning, and neither of them knew what waited ahead. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family.